Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is TJ Morton. I am an attorney with the Lockwood Law Firm in Tallahassee, and we serve as general counsel to the Florida Pharmacy Association. I'm going to be providing you a fairly short presentation on board and officer duties. So let's get right into it. So the FPA has a board of directors. It consists of 19 members. The FPA's constitution lays out who the members are. And as you can see here, I'll run through it. The immediate past president acts as chairperson of the board. The other members are the president-elect, the treasurer, speaker of the House, vice speaker of the House of Delegates, the executive vice president of the association who serves as the secretary, the president of the FSHP. There are also 9 elected directors who serve staggered terms. There is an elected student director and an elected technician director. According to the FPA's constitution, the board of directors is required to meet at least 2 times annually. Constitution also provides that a meeting of the board may be called by the chairperson at any time or by a petition of 1/4 of the members of the board. So that would be as long as 5 members request a meeting, then the board will have to hold a meeting. What is the purpose of a board of directors? Well, generally speaking, the board is responsible for directing the overall strategic direction of an organization and establishing its mission and goals. Boards are restricted based off the governing documents of a association or an organization. In this case, it would be the Constitution and bylaws. Boards provide fiduciary oversight to an organization. They also develop policies and manage risks, as well as exploring innovations. And of course, boards always have to be mindful of an association's resources. What are the legal obligations of a board? There's 3 main fiduciary duties that apply to each board member. That's the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. Duty of care is basically a requirement that a board member exercise that level of care that a reasonably prudent person would exercise under similar circumstances. In other words, board members need to make reasonable efforts to attend board meetings. They need to make reasonable efforts to actively participate in the board meetings, and they need to make sure they're reasonably informed on items before voting on them. The duty of loyalty basically means the board member needs to do what's in the best interest of the association, in this case, the FPA. They need to avoid conflicts of interest, and they need to ensure they maintain the confidentiality of information. Under the duty of loyalty, board members need to make sure that they don't use their position to further their personal interests. Everything they do needs to be in the best interest of the association. And board members should make sure that they recuse themselves even when there's an appearance of a conflict of interest. That's not necessarily a legal requirement, but I think that's the best practice. If there's an appearance of a conflict of interest, the board members should disclose that and recuse themselves from that particular vote. And the duty of obedience, that basically means that the member must be sure they're aware of a board's governing documents and they're aware of the laws and rules that apply to that board. They need to be faithful to the mission and goals of the organization, and they need to ensure they comply with the laws and governing documents. Board and staff relationship. Board and staff are partners, and they form a team. As I mentioned, the board focuses on the overall direction and vision of an organization, whereas the staff is responsible for implementing that direction and vision. Staff manages the day-to-day operations and the tactics consistent with the board's direction. The partnership is designed to allow the staff to kind of handle the day-to-day functions, avoid micromanagement from the board, and allows the board to focus on the sort of larger vision of the association. Board member expectations. Some of these kind of overlap with the fiduciary responsibilities of board members. For example, board members need to engage in deliberations. That goes towards the duty of care. They need to share their perspectives relating to what's best for the association. By board members actively engaging in deliberations, sharing their perspectives from different practice settings, I think that's how you come up with policies and procedures and things that are in the best interest of the association. They should bring forward external inputs. They need to be prepared. Again, the duty of care, you need to review the agenda and the materials and be prepared so you're informed. Wear the hat of an FPA board, avoid bias based on personal views. It goes to the duty of loyalty to the association. Agree to follow the agenda. Of course, be respectful of people and ideas, and again, keep discussions confidential. The FPA is a private organization. It's not public. There's no requirement that meetings be made public. Promote the association. This goes to the duty of loyalty. Identify and actively recruit future leaders. Be cognizant of issues and trends impacting the profession. Readily communicate with the CEO. I think an open dialogue with the CEO is imperative to ensuring that membership is aware of some of the concerns of board and vice versa. Use email as the primary vehicle for communicating with other members and with the staff. And of course, abide by board decisions. This goes to the duty of loyalty and obedience that's owed as a board member. Attend board events. And who is permitted to speak on behalf of the FPA? No one is permitted to speak on behalf of the FPA unless the board approves that person. So that's set forth in, I believe, the bylaws. Board minutes. Board minutes are a record of attendance and record of action taken by the board. The minutes aren't so detailed as to include what each member says and when they say it, but they are a record of the overall decisions of the board. There's not an audio recording of board meetings. Sidebar conversations are not permitted, and the board minutes include a start and end time for each meeting. The minutes would also contain any conflicts that arose, and the board minutes, well, not the minutes, but the agenda could contain a consent agenda, which helps to manage the meeting. A consent agenda is basically a practice by which non-controversial board items are approved apart from the rest of the agenda. So when you have a consent agenda, there is no discussion on each individual item there. Those items are taken in whole and approved in whole. If any member wants to discuss any item on a consent agenda, that item would be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Antitrust. So what is antitrust? It's basically the laws passed by Congress that prohibit anti-competitive behavior and unfair business practices. These laws make it illegal to conduct practices that are deemed to hurt other businesses or consumers. So generally, people think about antitrust only applying to big businesses. For example, the CVS-Aetna merger that just occurred, that had to undergo a antitrust review by the Department of Justice. However, antitrust laws actually apply to all businesses and even nonprofits like the FDA. What are some examples of antitrust activities? Price fixing. So if all local pharmacies in a given geographic area agreed to charge the same amount of money for a prescription, that would be an antitrust activity that would not be allowed. Geographic market allocation. Basically an agreement by competitors not to compete in another, in a assigned geographic area. And bid rigging. That is when if competitors are bidding on a contract or something along those lines, and they agree in advance that they're going to compete at the same price point. That would be antitrust activity. So how does this apply to FBA? Basically, members need to be cognizant that they shouldn't share certain confidential pricing information with each other, and certainly with the association. There was a case, I believe, in North Carolina several years ago, and it might have been the North Carolina Pharmacy Association, that involved antitrust activities, and there was some liability that arose from that. The FBA has established antitrust guidelines. All board members should be familiar with those guidelines, and I recommend reviewing them before each meeting so that they're fresh on your mind. I believe the guidelines are available online. I'm sure Michael Jackson can assist with providing those guidelines if you don't have them or haven't had the opportunity to review them. And that kind of concludes my presentation. If anyone has any specific questions or any questions at all really regarding this information, feel free to reach out. Here's my contact information. I would ask that any questions kind of be funneled through Michael Jackson, as I think it helps to kind of maintain organization and allows Mr. Jackson to be aware of sort of some of the concerns and the issues that are on the minds of the board members. But feel free to reach out. I try and be as responsive as possible. And I hope you have a good retreat.